Day 3 at Cannes.
Day 3.
We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the importance of today, Juneteenth.
Absolutely.
I think as an industry, it's really important that we as brands and marketers use our powers of influence to really celebrate diversity, celebrate the talent that's out there, to be able to tell stories that are more representative. So, I mean, I just wanted to call that out because you are one of those talents doing that work, and so thank you.
Thank you so much for the acknowledgement. I'm absolutely proud to be here representing McCormick, and I'm gonna actually take out a little something here from my hats. Always have something extra.
Little extra gift.
Just to share the business case for diverse teams and boards, and this was prepared by McKinsey. Companies in the top quartile for representation of women or ethnic diversity outperform their peers who are in the 4th quartile for the same measures, as measured by earnings before income taxes and margins. And finally, companies in the top quartile for board gender diversity are 27% more likely than those in the bottom quartile to outperform financially. And similarly, companies in the top quartile for ethnically diverse boards are 13% more likely to outperform those in the bottom quartile. So clearly, I am here representing both ethnic and female diversity, and I'm proud to be here.
Yes, yes. So don't do it because it's right. Do it because it'll actually help your business
Absolutely.
as well. Yeah, that's incredibly important. So thank you for sharing that. Our topic today is a really fun one for me. Like, we were riffing for a long time. What should we talk about?
Right.
And this idea of bringing entrepreneurship and the spirit, the kind of move fast, fail possibly, is a really important thing as a marketer. But how can you do that in a big established company like McCormick?
So I can tell you how I do that. One, my career has been in 3 chapters. One was starting at the big, established CPG brands out of New York, multi-billion-dollar. But then I did this really hard pivot and worked with private equity-backed startup, some really high-growth companies. And what that did for me was it really shook up my mindset. I like to say I'm shape-shifting. So as I go from industry to industry, category to category, I'm this, kind of person that gets in there and says, what is the art of the possible? Not that we've been here 135 years or a brand that's been around 140 years, but guess what? The world has changed since then, right? And it's really about leadership that actually inspires and challenges thinking. And you have to challenge yourself, actually, every single day to not get comfortable. At McCormick, I lead brands that are number 1 or number 2 in the category. I think everybody knows Frank's Red Hot, probably, right?
Can I say that you put that shit on everything?
Yeah, you absolutely can, and see, everybody remembers that. But, is Gen Z and Gen Alpha, able to say that top of mind as quickly? I also have Cholula. Oh, there you go.
Southern Californians and folks that know Cholula.
There you go, yeah. Who knows Cholula, right? And so, I come into the established companies knowing all of the amazing metrics and systems and processes and data and everything that we've got, but you got to go from your gut as well, right? And I think that's really the difference, is starting from your gut, inspiring the organization, and then making the business case as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, having these brands that are kind of very personal to each of us because the tastes are so different seems like a really incredibly opportunistic problem to have. So what kind of campaigns have you been really excited about where there's creativity matched to that audience or some insight that allowed you to go outside of that lane, shapeshift, as you said, to do something a little bit different?
So I'm going to bring one up that just won a Shorty Award.
Ooh.
Right? So French's mustard is also within my portfolio. And as we were talking about it, again, you talk about something that is an icon, right? It's classic. It's synonymous with mustard. Okay, well, you know what? I also, after doing some Gen Z research, literally going into their homes and sitting and observing them as they're having their little potluck, right? I have 3 Gen Z kids, by the way, so I can sometimes come across with a certain tone, but it's that mama voice that's coming out. And so what I realized is they also love nostalgia. And so what we ended up doing was partnering with Skittles, okay, curious flavor, tapping into that yellow, sunny, such a happy color. And we had a VW Bug that went up and down the East Coast last year. And that campaign was by far the largest that we have had in terms of impressions, but I also think brand memory, right? I saw people trying to sell those packet of mustard, French's mustard Skittles on eBay for like $7,000. I've kept a pack, but
She's holding out for
we'll
$8 grand.
Add it to my portfolio.
No, that's awesome. Not a mustard guy, but I respect it. I love it. Give me more hot sauce. Give me a hot sauce flavored Skittle, and I'd be in business. I think that, the concept of having an insight or something that came from the Gen Z audience is critical to doing great marketing. But how do you ensure that Skittles idea or maybe something else that you're working on is ultimately going to resonate? Like, what's your kind of strategy to proof things so that hopefully it's not a failure, right? Like, you just want to go and lean into it early.
Yeah, in that case, it was a PR activation, but I can tell you that, we've done a number of other Mustard Day activations over the years, and people are always curious to test flavor that's familiar in different formats. In that case, it was, again, Gen Z really liking nostalgia, right? And wanting to kind of go back in time. And so that VW Bug and all of those elements that we had brought them back in time and gave them something tangible that they could create some content off of, right? Clearly, some of it ended up on TikTok and so forth. So we do test copy, certainly when we're doing ad campaigns, but that one in particular was a PR activation.
Okay, cool. So you had that nostalgia play. Not always going to work on the younger folks. Right. So talk to me about how, I think of nostalgia as part of culture, right? We're Juneteenth, we've got culture in the game. How are you using culture as a component of some of the work that you're doing? We talked in our prep about some of the work with Cholula, and I think that's a really cool, it's a really cool case study. So can you share more about that?
Yeah, so Cholula, we were fortunate to now be the brand owners of it. And I actually went to Mexico last year. Actually went to where Cholula is made, Cholula hot sauce, and talked to the people, met one of the family members of the founder. He told stories, right, about how that came to be from his childhood. And when you get that richness of context and storytelling, you almost can't even put a price or a value on it, but people know about that authenticity, right? And then we decided, you know what? Okay, we've got hot sauce, which is salsa picante. And then we said, wait a minute, if you look around and you see Mexican food in the United States, well, there's another salsa, right? The one that everybody dips chips into, maybe call it Taco Tuesday. So we launched salsa, like the other salsa sauce, all right? And we have incredibly done that with speed. So I joined the company in June of 22. In less than a year, we launched that salsa. And we're able to do it before Cinco de Mayo. That launch has now established Cholula in a different aisle, right, in the mainstream Mexican aisle, going up against some very long-standing, what I'll call Tex-Mex brands that everybody had gotten accustomed to, enjoying on their Taco Tuesday. And we've risen within the top 10 in less than 2 years.
Yeah.
And that one, by the way, you talk about measures, right? There's trial, something new, let me go ahead and buy it. And then there's repeat. Oh, those repeat numbers. That's when you know that you're really onto something. It's not just about good flavor. It is, because we have amazing product development people and all of that. But we've continued to tell that story to remind people about where Cholula came from. It's still made in Mexico, et cetera. And I mean, that is one that we've got some really great ambition that I can't speak to right now. But the products that are in the mainstream Mexican aisle are doing extremely well. And that was one, if I did it in 9 months, you didn't need, in my old days, I would go all the way to bases 2 testing, right? You had to quantify the opportunity to death and ensure that there wasn't failure. That one was really a no-brainer. I mean, from my gut, talking also to buyers, they wanted it. So how much testing do you really need to do to extend your brand into something that is just so obvious?
Oh, that's a great story. But this idea of being able to go back and unlock real value in speaking to the family, right? Mm-hmm. And finding that. I think that is so entrepreneurial in terms of finding heart. Mm-hmm. And what we talked about, and I kind of breezed past it because I was excited to get started, but share a little bit about your background, because I think we also talked about another campaign that your Caribbean heritage had helped a little bit about, but just share kind of your origin story, if you will, and how you ended up here so we can talk about that campaign.
Well, because it is Juneteenth, I'll also tie it back to that. Juneteenth is not something that is known in the Caribbean. I learned of it here, right, living in the United States. But just the central idea of freedom, right? What I remember most being born in the Caribbean was feeling very free. A freedom where I could go anywhere, where I could look up and see people that looked like me or members of my family. They were at all levels of government. They were in all professions. I could walk barefoot and nobody was bothering me. I was on the beach. I could grab a mango off the tree and nobody was mad. I mean, it's just like there's a freedom to just live, right? And be the essence of yourself. And so why do I mention that? Because also in the Caribbean, there aren't as many big multinational companies, right? You don't have that safety net, quite frankly. So I also grew up with a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. You had to survive. And that is true in many developing nations. And so fast forward, how do I bring that into my work as well? Is because when you're born in a really small place, literally a dot, right, in the sea or the ocean, you know the world is much larger than you. You understand the opportunity for partnership. You understand the opportunity of moving when that opportunity is there and not hesitating. I know everybody has the perception of the Caribbean being, laid back and easy breezy, but let me tell you, I see somebody shaking her head, she knows, okay? Underneath all of that beach time, and dancing and music and all of that and good food, there is a fire that says for your survival, you actually need to act, and you act in the moment, and you build alliances. The other piece I would add, because the demographics of the United States are shifting, I also grew up with diversity before it had a name, right? So the Caribbean has almost people from every corner of the world. I have cousins that speak Dutch and French and all of these languages fluently. I surprised a guy at the hotel with un petit peu, and he was shy. I was like, nice I'm not really fluent. I'm sorry. My grandparents would be very disappointed. But anyhow, my Spanish is better. But at the end of the day, really tapping into all of those cuisines, right? And all of that inspiration. And I'm so excited to see a lot of that now. Gen Z in particular has really embraced it. And I don't even think they say diversity. They just live it.
Yeah, I would agree, especially when you're looking at it in a more broad sense, right? And then the inclusivity story, I think it's just there. Yeah. It's how we live, right? Yes. Like as younger people. When you talk about this idea of shifting and making these campaigns relevant and building overarching strategies relevant, how are you using creative or creative stories or productions to be able to iterate and really bring that to life?
Yeah, so we have obviously social listening teams. We've got a lot of data, including first-party data, but it's the listening, right? I like to bring in humanity. And I say that because what is actually behind the numbers? So when you create an ad, you could have someone sitting, I don't know, in a restaurant, or no, I take that back, in their kitchen. But every home has certain contextual clues. You know, probably from some of the props, from, I don't know, something that's on the wall, etc., who that person is. So we build really strong creative that is targeted, right, to who we would consider our growth target, but we spend time really understanding them at a very deep and fundamental level. And there are some universal truths, don't get me wrong. I think everybody likes to eat, and most people like food that tastes good. So in a way, our job is a little bit easy, right? But there are also some folks who are very much traditionalists. So, you know, I don't want to change that aspect of my life. And you know what? In that way, we honor them too, because we are bringing back, let's say, French's mustard on a hot dog, right? Lots of vegans around, you know. So now we need to rethink how we position mustard, which is actually a very clean product, right? To vegan, vegetarian, etc., and still evoke that sort of happiness, right? What does mustard represent? When do people really typically consume it? It's with family, it's during grilling season, it's summer. And so there are opportunities for us to create creative iterations, I'll call them, that are adjusted depending on who we're serving it to. And in fact, in the case of the campaign from last summer, bringing them to us, right? When you heard that Volkswagen, that VW bus was going to be in Atlanta, for example, it was fun, right? So really breaking down things, I think, in terms of, you know, finding ways to make it appeal to multiple audiences, because we absolutely do not want to lose our base. And most brands actually are living by the people who are buying their original or their first couple of SKUs. And that is really the lifeblood of most brands.
Yeah, I think the thing that resonated most from that for me is like you were sharing, hey, if it was your kitchen, or, you know, a picture of supposedly your kitchen and there wasn't a mango on the corner back there, that might not be right.
Yeah, if you show me a fruit bowl and you don't have a mango in there, then I know you're not from my tribe.
Right, exactly. And by the way, I still want that tutorial on how to actually eat a mango.
Okay,
you
I'm
gotta
glad
help
you
me
said
out.
eat, not cut. He's learning.
See, I was listening when we had our conversation.
Yeah.
In the spirit of our kind of topic today, what kind of tips would you give to marketers on really reshaping process, considering hard conversations, or really trying to apply a more entrepreneurial mindset and maybe larger organizations or smaller organizations as well?
Yeah, I think if you take care of your base, I'm just going to start from a business perspective, right? Those loyal, long-standing shoppers, consumers, most organizations are not going to argue with you, right? So there's a base business that sustains us, and let's make sure those plans are solid. But to push forward and to have high growth and to appeal to new audiences, you have to be relentless. And I say relentless in a, not just reading the consumer insights reports that you receive, but are you actually getting out of the office, going into the places where your consumers are actually consuming your product unannounced and living with them? I like to say, for those who want to understand that entrepreneurial spirit or drive, and it's hard for me to put it into words because I just live it, I just do it. You know, people have asked me, oh my God, like, how did you actually make that happen in such a short period of time within your first year? And I was like, I just didn't think it wasn't possible, right? And so it's one of those things where you step out on faith, you do take risks, be willing to live with it if it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't, and I'm actually okay with that because I did say I don't believe in failure. I think you learn, right? And then there's the quantifying of the value. So if you do something that actually did not deliver against the original stated objectives, what did you learn? I had that experience where we launched something and in a category since I've been there, and it didn't work. It didn't work in the sense of it's not turning, right? Those SKUs aren't turning at the velocity that the retailers would allow us to leave it on shelf. But what we found was it's appealing to new consumers and new shoppers. And sometimes retailers actually will keep a product on shelf because it's bringing new people into their stores. So while your item may not actually be turning, at the level that they want, they know that in that basket will be all of these other things that are extremely valuable to them to sell. The last thing I would say is, I said be relentless, but almost look at it as if this were your business, what would you do? If this were your family livelihood, as in, if you don't make this work, right? What happens to your kids? And I'm not talking about a paycheck. For me, I'm like, you know what? I'm trying to build something meaningful here that in a decade from now, 2 decades from now, actually has value and resonates in the culture, right? And if you're always reading, I'll call it Circana, or Nielsen or what have you, you're really reading the past, right? And that's where the future is happening now. How do you continue to move forward? I just think there's just a big world out there, lots of stimuli, lots of insights, and I have to kudos to McCormick for taking some of that crazy ride with me. They're like, here comes Valda again. And
I know it's going to be a crazy ask. Here we go.
Yeah, but the tension, too. I think you have to be comfortable with tension. I'm that person in the room that will push and ask the tough questions and come back. And believe me, I'm very polite with it. It's not an ugly thing. But if I don't get a yes now, I'll find a way to grab you for coffee or grab you for lunch or grab somebody who's your friend who I know will influence you, right? It's also the art of the possible in terms of influencing the organization. But I would just encourage everyone to not lose that fire in your gut. Because if I'm just going along with what everyone has always done, it ends up being a pretty boring existence for me. So, I've had some luck and some wins in the first 2 years at McCormick. This is actually my 2-year anniversary while I'm here in Cannes. Hopefully I'll continue, to keep that fire and not lose that energy that I had coming in to the organization.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. We heard amazing things from you today. I love these key points on entrepreneurship. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. I have one question for you, just a rapid fire.
Oh, this is a surprise. Here we go.
This one's actually really easy because we ran out of time.
Okay.
My aspiration as a marketer, our company's aspiration is always to try and make advertising really unique and reach this threshold that we call remarkable. And so when I say the word remarkable to you, what does that mean?
It means I feel it in my gut. It honestly, remarkable stays with me, right? It's a memory also. So remarkable work isn't something that passes on and you forget it tomorrow. It stays with you and you tell it, actually. So really remarkable advertising gets talked about, right, in people's homes, on, sports fields and so forth. So remarkable is memorable, and memorable meaning it's committed to my memory. So I felt it on a human level.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Your talk has been really inspirational for me. I hope everyone else felt the same. So have a great rest of the can.
Thank you. Thank you for being here early after late nights, I'm sure.